a certain occasion, Bhajas Rabasa, hoping for divine favor, performed a rite which required that he should give away all his possessions. He was careful, however, to sacrifice only his cattle, and of these only such as were useless, the old and the barren, the blind and the lame. And observing this niggardliness, Nachiketa, his young son, whose heart had received the truth taught in the scriptures, thought to himself, surely a worshipper who dares bring such worthless gifts is doomed to utter darkness. And thus reflecting, he came to his father and cried, Father, I too belong to thee. To whom givest thou me? And his father did not answer. But when Nachiketa asked the question again and yet again, he replied impatiently, Thee I give to death. Then Nachiketa thought to himself, of my father's many sons and disciples, I am indeed the best, or at least of the middle rank, not the worst. But of what good am I to the king of death? Yet being determined to keep his father's word, he said, Father, do not repent thy vow. Consider how it has been with those that have gone before, and how it will be with those that now live. Like corn, a man ripens and falls to the ground, and like corn, he springs up again in his season. Having thus spoken, the boy journeyed to the house of death. But the god was not at home, and for 3 nights Nachiketa waited. And when at last the king of death returned, he was met by his servants, who said to him, A Brahmin, like to a flame of fire, entered thy house as a guest, and thou wast not there. Therefore must a peace offering be made to him. With all accustomed rites, O king, thou must receive thy guest. For if a householder show not due hospitality to a Brahmin, he will lose what he most desires, the merits of his good deeds, his righteousness, his sons and his cattle. And then the king of death approached Nachiketa and welcomed him with courteous words. O Brahmin, he said, I salute thee. Thou art indeed a guest worthy of all reverence. Let, I pray thee, no harm befall me. 3 nights hast thou passed in my house, and hast not received my hospitality. Ask of me, therefore, 3 boons, 1 for each night. O death, replied Nachiketa, let it be. And as the first of these boons I ask that my father be not anxious about me, that his anger be appeased, and that when thou sendest me back to him, he recognize me and welcome me. By my will, declared death, thy father shall recognize thee and love thee as heretofore, and seeing thee again alive, he shall be tranquil of mind, and he shall sleep in peace. Then said Nachiketa, in heaven there is no fear at all. Thou, O death, art not there, nor in that place does the thought of growing old make one tremble. There, free from hunger and from thirst, and far from the reach of sorrow, all rejoice and are glad. Thou knowest, O king of death, the fire sacrifice that leads to heaven. Teach me that sacrifice, for I am full of faith, and this is my second wish. Whereupon, consenting, death taught the boy the fire sacrifice and all the rites and ceremonies attending it. And Nachiketa repeated all that he had learned, and death, well pleased with him, said, I grant thee an extra boon. Henceforth shall this sacrifice be called the Nachiketa sacrifice after thy name. Choose now thy 3rd boon. And then Nachiketa considered within himself and said, when a man dies, there is this doubt. Some say he is, others say he is not. Taught by thee, I would know the truth. This is my third wish. Nay, replied Death, even the gods were once puzzled by this mystery. Subtle indeed is the truth concerning it, and not easy to understand. Choose thou some other boon, O Nachiketa. But Nachiketa would not be denied. Thou sayest, O Death, that even the gods were once puzzled by this mystery, and that it is not easy to understand. Surely there is no teacher better to explain it than thou, and there is no other boon equal to this. To which, trying Nachiketa again, the god replied, Ask for sons and grandsons who shall live 100 years. Ask for cattle, elephants, horses, gold. Choose for thyself a mighty kingdom. Or if thou canst imagine aught better, ask for that. Not for sweet pleasures only, but for the power beyond all thought to taste their sweetness. Yea, verily, the supreme enjoyer will I make thee of every good thing. Celestial maidens, beautiful to behold, such indeed as were not meant for mortals, even these, together with their bright chariots and their musical instruments, will I give unto thee to serve thee. But for the secret of death, O Nachiketa, do not ask. But Nachiketa stood fast and said, These things endure only till the morrow, O destroyer of life, and the pleasures they give wear out the senses. Keep thou therefore horses and chariots, keep dance and song for thyself. How shall he desire wealth, O Death, who once hath seen thy face? Nay, only the boon that I have chosen, that only do I ask. Having found out the society of the imperishable and the immortal, as in knowing thee I have done, how shall I, subject to decay and death, and knowing well the vanity of the flesh, how shall I wish for long life? Tell me, O King, the supreme secret regarding which men doubt. No other boon will I ask. And whereupon the King of Death, well pleased at heart, began to teach Nachiketa the secret of immortality. And the King of Death said, The good is one thing, the pleasant is another. These two, differing in their ends, both prompt to action. Blessed are they that choose the good. They that choose the pleasant miss the goal. Both the good and the pleasant present themselves to men, and the wise, having examined both, distinguish the one from the other. The wise prefer the good to the pleasant. The foolish, driven by fleshly desires, prefer the pleasant to the good. Thou, O Nachiketa, having looked upon fleshly desires, delightful to the senses, hast renounced them all. Thou hast turned from the miry way wherein many a man wallows. Far from each other, and leading to different ends, are ignorance and knowledge. Thee, O Nachiketa, I regard as one who aspires after knowledge, for a multitude of pleasant objects were unable to tempt thee. Living in the abyss of ignorance, yet wise in their own conceit, deluded fools go round and round, the blind led by the blind. To the thoughtless youth, deceived by the vanity of earthly possessions, the path that leads to the eternal abode is not revealed. This world alone is real. There is no hereafter. Thinking thus, he falls again and again, birth after birth, into my jaws. To many it is not given to hear of the self. Many, though they hear of it, do not understand it. Wonderful is he who speaks of it. Intelligent is he who learns of it. Blessed is he who, taught by a good teacher, is able to understand it. The truth of the self cannot be fully understood when taught by an ignorant man, for opinions regarding it, not founded in knowledge, vary one from another. Subtler than the subtlest is this self, and beyond all logic. Taught by a teacher who knows the self and Brahman as one, a man leaves vain theory behind and attains to the truth. The awakening which thou hast known does not come through the intellect, but rather in fullest measure from the lips of the wise. Beloved Nachiketa, blessed, blessed art thou, because thou seekest the eternal. Would that I had more pupils like thee. Well I know that earthly treasure lasts but till the morrow, for did not I myself, wishing to be king of death, make sacrifice with fire? But the sacrifice was a fleeting thing, performed with fleeting objects, and small is my reward, seeing that only for a moment will my reign endure. The goal of worldly desire, the glittering objects for which all men long, the celestial pleasures they hope to gain by religious rites, the most sought after of miraculous powers, all these were within thy grasp, but all these with firm resolve thou hast renounced. The ancient effulgent being, the indwelling spirit, subtle, deep hidden in the lotus of the heart, is hard to know, but the wise man following the path of meditation knows him, and is freed alike from pleasure and from pain. The man who has learned that the self is separate from the body, the senses, and the mind, and has fully known him, the soul of truth, the subtle principle, such a man verily attains to him and is exceeding glad, because he has found the source and dwelling place of all felicity. Truly do I believe, O Nachiketa, that for thee the gates of joy stand open. And Nachiketa said, Teach me, O king, I beseech thee, whatever thou knowest to be beyond right and wrong, beyond cause and effect, beyond past, present, and future. And the king of death said, Of that goal which all the Vedas declare, which is implicit in all penances, and in pursuit of which men lead lives of continence and service, of that will I briefly speak. It is Om. This syllable is Brahman. This syllable is indeed supreme. He who knows it obtains his desire. It is the strongest support. It is the highest symbol. He who knows it is reverenced as a knower of Brahman. The self whose symbol is Om is the omniscient Lord. He is not born, he does not die, he is neither cause nor effect. This ancient one is unborn, eternal, imperishable, and though the body be destroyed, he is not killed. If the slayer thinks that he slays, if the slain thinks that he is slain, neither of them knows the truth. The self slays not, nor is he slain. Smaller than the smallest, greater than the greatest, this self forever dwells within the hearts of all. And when a man is free from desire, his mind and senses purified, he beholds the glory of the self, and is without sorrow. Though seated, he travels far. Though at rest, he moves all things. Who but the purest of the pure can realize this effulgent being, who is joy and who is beyond joy? Formless is he, though inhabiting form. In the midst of the fleeting, he abides forever. All-pervading and supreme is the self, and the wise man, knowing him in his true nature, transcends all grief. The self is not known through study of the scriptures, nor through subtlety of the intellect, nor through much learning, but by him who longs for him is he known. Verily, unto him does the self reveal his true being. By learning, a man cannot know him. If he desists not from evil, if he control not his senses, if he quiet not his mind, and practice not meditation. To him, Brahmins and Kshatriyas are but food. and death itself a condiment. Both the individual self and the universal self have entered the cave of the heart, the abode of the Most High. But the knowers of Brahman and the householders who perform the fire sacrifices see a difference between them, as between sunshine and shadow. May we perform the Nachiketa sacrifice, which bridges the world of suffering. May we know the imperishable Brahman, who is fearless, and who is the end and refuge of those who seek liberation. Know that the self is the rider and the body the chariot, that the intellect is the charioteer and the mind the reins. The senses, say the wise, are the horses, and the roads they travel are the mazes of desire. The wise call the self the enjoyer when he is united with the body, the senses, and the mind. When a man lacks discrimination and his mind is uncontrolled, his senses are unmanageable, like the restive horses of a charioteer. But when a man has discrimination and his mind is controlled, his senses, like the well-broken horses of a charioteer, lightly obey the rein. He who lacks discrimination, whose mind is unsteady and whose heart is impure, never reaches the goal, but is born again and again. But he who has discrimination, whose mind is steady and whose heart is pure, reaches the goal, and having reached it, is born no more. The man who has a sound understanding for charioteer, a controlled mind for reins, he it is that reaches the end of the journey, the supreme abode of Vishnu, the all-pervading. The senses derive from the physical objects from mind, mind from intellect, intellect from ego, ego from the unmanifested seed, and the unmanifested seed from Brahman, the uncaused cause. Brahman is the end of the journey. Brahman is the supreme goal. This Brahman, this self, deep hidden in all beings, is not revealed to all, but to the seers pure in heart, concentrated in mind, to them is he revealed. The senses of the wise man obey his mind obeys his intellect obeys his ego, and his ego obeys the self. Arise, awake, approach the feet of the Master, and know that. Like the sharp edge of a razor, the sages say, is the path. Narrow it is, and difficult to tread. Soundless, formless, intangible, undying, tasteless, odorless, eternal, without beginning, without end, immutable beyond nature is the self, and knowing him as such, one is freed from death. The wise man, having heard and taught the eternal truth revealed by the King of Death to Nachiketa, is glorified in the heaven of Brahma. He who sings with devotion this supreme secret in the assembly of the Brahmins, or at the rites in memory of his fathers, is rewarded with rewards immeasurable. The self-existent made the senses turn outward, and accordingly man looks toward what is without and sees not what is within. Rare is he who, longing for immortality, shuts his eyes to what is without and beholds the self. Fools follow the desires of the flesh and fall into the snare of all-encompassing death. But the wise, knowing the self as eternal, seek not the things that pass away. He through whom man sees, tastes, smells, hears, feels, and enjoys is the omniscient Lord. He verily is the immortal self, and knowing him one knows all things. He through whom man experiences the sleeping or waking states is the all-pervading self, and knowing him one grieves no more. He who knows that the individual soul, enjoyer of the fruits of action, is the self, ever present within, Lord of time, past and future, casts out all fear, for this self is the immortal self. He who sees the firstborn, born of the mind of Brahma, born before the creation of waters, and sees him inhabiting the lotus of the heart, living among physical elements, sees Brahman indeed, for this firstborn is the immortal self. That being who is the power of all powers and is born as such, who embodies himself in the elements and in them exists, and who has entered the lotus of the heart, is the immortal self. Agni, the all-seeing, who lies hidden in fire sticks like a child well guarded in the womb, who is worshipped day by awakened souls and by those who offer oblations in sacrificial fire, he is the immortal self. That in which the sun rises and in which it sets, that which is the source of all the powers of nature and of the senses, that which nothing can transcend, that is the immortal self. What is within us is also without. What is without is also within. He who sees difference between what is within and what is without goes evermore from death to death. By the purified mind alone is the indivisible Brahman to be attained. Brahman alone is, nothing else is. He who sees the manifold universe and not the one reality goes evermore from death to death. That being of the size of a thumb dwells deep within the heart, and he is the Lord of time, past and future, and having attained him, one fears no more. He verily is the immortal self. That being of the size of a thumb is like a flame without smoke. He is the Lord of time, past and future, the same today and tomorrow. He verily is the immortal self. As rain fallen on a hill streams down its side, so runs he after many births, who sees manifoldness in the self. As pure water poured into pure water remains pure, so does the self remain pure, O Nachiketa, uniting with Brahman. To the birthless, the light of whose consciousness forever shines, belongs the city of 11 gates. He who meditates on the ruler of that city knows no more sorrow. He attains liberation, and for him there can no longer be birth or death, for the ruler of that city is the immortal self. The immortal self is the sun shining in the sky. He is the breeze blowing in space. He is the fire burning on the altar. He is the guest dwelling in the house. He is all men. He is in the gods. He is in the ether. He is wherever there is truth. He is the fish that is born in water. He is the plant that grows in the soil. He is the river that gushes from the mountain. He, the changeless reality, the illimitable. He, the adorable one, seated in the heart, is the power that gives breath, and unto him all the senses do homage. What can remain when the dweller in this body leaves the outgrown shell, since he is verily the immortal self? Man does not live by breath alone, but by him in whom is the power of breath. And now, O Nachiketa, will I tell thee of the unseen, the eternal Brahman, and of what befalls the self after death. Of those ignorant of the self, some enter into beings possessed of wombs. Others enter into plants, according to their deeds and the growth of their intelligence. That which is awake in us even while we sleep, shaping in dream the objects of our desire, that indeed is pure, that is Brahman, and that verily is called the immortal. All the worlds have their being in it, and none can transcend it. That is the self. As fire, though one, takes the shape of every object which it consumes, so the self, though one, takes the shape of every object in which it dwells. As air, though one, takes the shape of every object which it enters, so the self, though one, takes the shape of every object in which it dwells. As the sun, revealer of all objects to the seer, is not harmed by the sinful eye, nor by the impurities of the objects it gazes on, so the one self dwelling in all is not touched by the evils of the world, for he transcends all. He is one, the Lord and innermost self of all. Of one form he makes himself many forms. To him who sees the self revealed in his own heart belongs eternal bliss, to none else, to none else. Intelligence of the intelligent, eternal among the transient. He, though one, makes possible the desires of many. To him who sees the self revealed in its own heart belongs eternal peace, to none else, to none else. And Nachiketa said, how, O king, shall I find that blissful self, supreme, ineffable, who is attained by the wise? Does he shine by himself, or does he reflect another's light? And the king of death said, him the sun does not illumine, nor the moon, nor the stars, nor the lightning, nor verily fires kindled upon earth. He is the one light that gives light to all, and he shining, everything shines. This universe is a tree eternally existing, its root aloft, its branches spread below. The pure root of the tree is Brahman, the immortal, in whom the three worlds have their being, whom none can transcend, who is verily the self. The whole universe came forth from Brahman and moves in Brahman. Mighty and awful is he, like to a thunderbolt crashing loud through the heavens. For those who attain him, death has no terror. In fear of him fire burns, the sun shines, the rains fall, the winds blow, and death kills. If a man fails to attain Brahman before he casts off his body, he must again put on a body in the world of created beings. In one's own soul, Brahman is realized clearly, as if seen in a mirror. In the heaven of Brahma also is Brahman clearly recognized, as one distinguishes light from darkness. In the world of the fathers he is beheld as in a dream, and in the world of angels he appears as if reflected in water. The senses have separate origin in their several objects. They may be active as in the waking state, or they may be inactive as in sleep. And he who knows them to be distinct from the changeless self grieves no more. Above the senses is the mind, above the mind is the intellect, above the intellect is the ego, and above the ego is the unmanifested seed, the primal cause. And verily beyond the unmanifested seed is Brahman, the all-pervading spirit, the unconditioned, knowing whom one attains to freedom and achieves immortality. None beholds him with the eyes, for he is without visible form, yet in the heart is he revealed through self-control and meditation, and those who know him become immortal. When all the senses are stilled, when the mind is at rest, when the intellect wavers not, that, say the wise, is the highest state. This calm of the senses and the mind has been defined as yoga, and he who attains it is freed from delusion. In one not freed from delusion, this calm is uncertain, unreal, it comes and goes. Brahman, words cannot reveal, mind cannot reach, eyes cannot see. How then, save through those who know him, can he be known? There are two selves, the apparent self and the real self. Of these, it is the real self and he alone who must be felt as truly existing. To the man who has felt him as truly existing, he reveals his innermost nature. The mortal in whose heart desire is dead becomes immortal. The mortal in whose heart the knots of ignorance are untied becomes immortal. These are the highest truths taught in the scriptures. Radiating from the lotus of the heart, there are 101 nerves. One of these ascends towards the 1,000-petaled lotus in the brain. If when a man comes to die, his vital force passes upward and out through this nerve, he attains immortality. But if his vital force passes out through another nerve, he goes to one or another plane of mortal existence and remains subject to birth and death. The supreme person of the size of a thumb, the innermost self, dwells forever in the hearts of all beings. And as one draws the pith from a reed, so must the aspirant after truth, with great perseverance, separate the self from the body. Know the self to be pure and immortal. Yea, pure and immortal. And Nachiketa, having learned from the god this knowledge, and the whole process of yoga, was freed from impurities and from death, and was united with Brahman. And thus will it be with another also, if ye know the innermost self. Om.